What's up everybody, this is the 2023 Dodge Hornet, which is an all-new model here for Dodge, and it's a subcompact crossover that adds some performance flair to it, which is something you don't get from most of the other competitors out there. It's also the fastest and the most powerful thing under $30,000 with a starting price before destination of just under $30,000. Right up front there, you have Dodge's somewhat signature grille there, where you have the very thin slit with a little mail slot style cut out there right below the grille there. And you know, really nice. You have like these LED headlights as standard, which have the LED accent light as well. Look really great. And it's cool how you can even see the front mount intercooler there hiding behind that lower part of the front bumper, and just a really cool look. You also have this vented hood, which is another Dodge cue from other models that's transferred over here, and it is functional, by the way. It is extracting air and just adds some extra aggression up front here as well, and I think it looks great. Coming down to the sides here, this one has the blacktop package and the track package, and so the blacktop package gives you the black wheels along with black badging, black mirror caps, and looks really nice. But then the track package here gives you these 20-inch wheels as well, with Brembo brakes hiding behind them and some sportier tires. And the side profile here on this GT version we're looking at right now has the non-painted little cladding around the wheel arches here that will be painted on the RTs. They also sit over an inch lower for those RT models, which are the sportier of the two here. Out back also looks great. You have a full width tail lamp there, and even have a little lit up Dodge logo there in the middle of it. The only thing that's really missing here on the back end is there's no visible exhaust tips here on the GT version. They're hidden behind the rear bumper there, but otherwise, you know, just a really nice back end there. I like how there's some curvature there too, along with that curved tail lamp, and just a really cool look. I also like how it's a little bit of a sport back kind of shape. It's not quite as boxy as some other crossovers in this segment. And so overall, I think they did a great job here on the styling for the Hornet. The interior of the Hornet is pretty nice, so it's really impressive the amount of standard stuff you get even in that $30,000 Hornet. So you get standard 12.3-inch digital gauges, a standard 10.25-inch touchscreen, a wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, all that stuff comes standard here. Now this one we're looking at is pretty loaded up. This is the Plus trim, which gives you heated and cooled leather seats, a sunroof, power liftgate, and navigation, along with a wireless charging pad. The Plus package also gives you this Harman Kardon stereo, and I have to say, after driving this vehicle around all morning and listening to the stereo a good bit, it really is very clear and crisp and a really great sounding stereo. But this one here has the track package added on as well, which gets rid of the sunroof here, and you have Alcantara seats that lose the cooling function, unfortunately. They're still heated, but the Alcantara is a really cool thing here with this you know, kind of red background it has through those perforations, and really nicely bolstered seats. I mean, these seats are really grippy, and you know, I mean, even if you got the leather, they'd still be pretty grippy, but especially with the Alcantara, grip you in really nicely. The seats also are power adjustments and have power lumbar as well, and just feel really nice here for sure, although I do wish you could get the cooling with this track package upholstery, but still really great nonetheless. The steering wheel in the Hornet is a really great wheel, partially because it is based on the Alfa Romeo wheel, which is a great wheel. This does share a lot of components. This is, you know, heavily based on the Alfa Romeo Tonale, and you'll certainly see that on the inside here, but it's a good thing in this case with the part sharing, because Alfa's wheels are amazing. But you'll notice like there's none of the buttons on the back of the wheel like you're used to on other Dodge products. You just have the buttons here on the front, but nice and simple, just a few of them. And really cool, you have the sport button here right on the wheel as well. And just a great 9-3 grip, and just a really great wheel. It's also heated here as well in this Plus version. And then yeah, those digital gauges are great. They give you lots of customization, lots of good information. It's interesting though how it'll actually like black out all of the other numbers, so it makes it a very simplified look as far as, you know, it shows you exactly the speed and, you know, where your tach reading is at that moment. But if you're in sport mode, it will show you all of the available range that you have there for those two gauges. But interesting there. And then in the middle, you see lots of customization. Really nice how you can have a map view there in the middle, and it'll even give you your navigation instructions in the right pod, which you can see you can customize that right pod as well to have a bunch of different things. And really nice that you have all that. I do wish you could see like a boost gauge here in the middle, but you can see some of that information here on these performance pages in the center, where that'll show you your boost. That'll also show you all your accessory gauges as well if you want to keep tabs on that stuff. And so really great they do offer that. Dodge is really good about giving you that information. It's so great they have it in there. But moving over to that center touchscreen here, it's really nice. I just love the fact that it's standard, and the fact that it runs the great Uconnect 5 infotainment software, and it's pretty snappy. Now there were a couple of occasions, you can see whenever I'm filming this screen, where, you know, it took a beat to think about what I wanted to do before it actually, you know, did it. So it's not the snappiest in this application, but it still works really well for the most part. Very customizable with all those different pages you can set up for various things, and it just works really nicely. You also do have all your like seat controls, for example, still in there, which if you've been familiar with any other Dodge product, same kind of deal here where there's no physical buttons for turning on the heated and cooled seats or the heated steering wheel, but you know, nice that you still at least have it within quick reach, quick access there with that little drop down menu from anywhere in the screen. But it is great that you still have a row of actual toggles here for all your basic climate control stuff. Other things here though, so you'll see around the shifter area, you have a volume scroller. If you're wondering where the volume knob is, it's down here. And that's a very European thing that, you know, I think carries over from the Alpha, but the trim in here is pretty nice as well. I will say though, you know, you have like hard plastic down by your knees, and competitors like the Mazda CX-30 Turbo do have some padding down here, but otherwise, you know, the dash is padded and has some nice red stitching here on it. All the touch points are nice and softly padded, and so overall it's a pretty luxurious feeling interior, again, even on the standard trims where you will get like cloth seats and stuff, but still very premium. And then of course, you know, it gets a little nicer here with these add-ons, with these optional packages. But as far as storage space goes here in the Hornet, it's pretty good. So you have, you know, a good sized pocket in the door there with a bottle holder. You have a wireless charging pad here, and then you also do have these two cup holders that have the rubber notches in them, so hold your drinks in very well. And then the center armrest, which again, nice and softly padded. You open that up and it's a nice deep cubby down there, so you can fit a lot of things in there. So pretty practical as far as subcompact crossovers goes as well. Backseat in the Hornet is also pretty good, but I will have to say that getting into the backseat, you got to be careful with your head, because the way that glass and that trim comes out whenever you open the door, if you're not paying attention, it could smack you in the face possibly. So you got to make sure, you know, it does come out a lot and you're not really expecting that. But once you get in there, it's a really nice back seat. So as far as subcompact crossovers goes, I'd say it's a pretty good amount of space. I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have about an inch or two to spare there, but you know, I don't feel cramped, which is impressive, because like the CX-30, for example, you do feel a little more cramped. You have a little less space than that. There are some others in this segment that are much slower and less performance oriented that do give you a little more space than this does, but overall I'd say it's above average for this segment currently. And you'll see there's a fold down center armrest. They also have their dedicated air vents, power outlets back there as well, and plenty of headroom, especially again, this one not having that moonroof. Also, cargo space in the back is pretty good. Again, for the subcompact segment, I mean, it's a good deep area there. You can also lower the floor to a lower setting if you don't care about having a totally flat load floor whenever you drop those rear seats. And you know, a little power outlet back there as well. And you know, so a good amount of space, a nice practical little crossover. And so overall, I think this interior is really impressive. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Hornet here just has a standard Dodge key still, no new keys for Dodge still, but you know, it's plastic. It's not great, but you know, thankfully it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket most of the time, hit the engine start button here, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the Hornet. So the first thing you notice about these, so you have a pretty, you know, nice and high sitting position here, very crossover-like, of course. And visibility is pretty good as a result, since you're sitting up a little higher. You do have some thicker A-pillars, but they are swept back a good bit, so it's out of your primary, you know, field of vision here and hasn't gotten in the way, at least so far. View out of the back is also great, you know, typical hatch, you know, crossover kind of fashion. And so very easy to drive. It doesn't feel too big or anything either. It feels, you know, nice and compact for this segment, of course, and it just feels really good. The only thing I will say though is that I wish the steering wheel went down a little bit lower, because it's angled upward just a little bit more than I would like, and there's no way to have it go down any further. This is also the lowest that this seat will go down, and so me even being just 5'9", you know, I still have plenty of headroom. This one doesn't have the moonroof, but I've just noticed that I just wish it would go down a little bit more. So you really do definitely have a, you know, crossover SUV kind of sitting position no matter how you have it set up. You have this 9-speed automatic here in these regular GTs. You'll have a 6-speed auto in the RT, but the 9-speed is pretty responsive, but I am missing paddle shifters. You only get paddle shifters on the RT, which is kind of strange, because this is, you know, marketed as a sporty vehicle, and I mean, there's even some, you know, boring family crossovers that have paddle shifters, and yet there's no paddle shifters here. So if you want to manually shift, you got to just go the old school way and use the stick down here. You can manually shift it that way, and we'll try that out here just for the heck of it. And it's pretty quick. But it's It's not as quick as the ZF 8-speed, and if you're used to some of the other sportier products from Dodge, they use the ZF 8-speed. It's much snappier with its shifts. Unfortunately, this is much slower. So you're probably better off just letting the transmission do its own thing. There's a sport mode here that will give you some sharper shifts, and of course recalibrate the throttle and everything to make it a little bit more aggressive. So that's going to be the way to go, and just let the transmission do its own thing if you are trying to do some sporty driving here in this. I'm also really enjoying the sound here. So it has a nice little growl to the engine, and you hear some of the turbo sounds, the whooshing and some of the wastegate stuff when you let off the gas. And obviously it's not very loud or anything. It would be fun if it was louder, but for a vehicle that's trying to blend both the sporty and also a normal daily driver, a little bit more mainstream as well, I like that you hear something, and it's a little more than I think a lot of the competitors offer. Like, you certainly don't hear this much induction noise whenever you're in like a Mazda CX-30 Turbo, which is one of the main competitors to this. So I do appreciate the extra little bit of sound you get over that. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into sport mode here, and let's do an acceleration. And here we go. All right. I actually felt the front wheels twitch a little bit there, even though this is all-wheel drive as standard on all of these. But it gets up and goes pretty nicely. So it's technically under $30,000. It's the fastest and most powerful thing you can get. So this runs the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, the Hurricane 4 here in the GTs, and it does 268 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. It'll do a 6.5 seconds 0 to 60. And so the engine is a really nice engine. Like I said, it sounds pretty nice with the growl you get here. It's also both port and direct injected, so you have the best of both worlds there for better durability, reliability, all that. It's a good amount of power. Like I said, it's more than any of the others offer under 30. Now, whenever you go up to stuff beyond $30,000, there is also the Mazda CX-30 Turbo, which does less horsepower but more torque. That does 320 pound-feet of torque. But I gotta say, this feels pretty close to that as far as power goes. I think that the CX-30 Turbo might feel a tiny bit punchier in some instances, but this feels really good. And we're also on some windy corners here now. And one thing that is interesting, so sport mode does give you heavier steering. It also retunes the transmission settings here. You also get dual stage dampers, so they actually get to be a little bit firmer here in sport mode. That is something you get with the track package, which also gives you these sportier 235 wide tires instead of 225s, and they're Michelin Pilot Sport all-season tires here on these upper trims. When you go to the base 17s, it doesn't get the sporty tire. But as far as the handling goes, so one thing I'll say, so they got the weight down pretty good. So it's 3,715 pounds here for the GTs, and it feels pretty substantial as far as it feels nice and planted. It feels very confidence inspiring. Now, I will say the steering, it is a little heavier here in sport mode, but it sometimes oddly feels a little light and a little disconnected. I wish it was a little more direct feeling, but it feels pretty good overall. Also here with the track package, you get Brembo 4-piston brakes up front, and they bite pretty well, but honestly, I was expecting a little more bite right at the top of the pedal. There's more of a gradual ramp up to the braking, and but once you do get on them, then they do bite down really nicely. You do have a little bit of wiggle and lean here, but it is a crossover once again. This isn't a sports sedan or anything, so you have to cut a little bit of a break. But I will say that I do think that the CX-30 Turbo feels a little bit sharper and a little less wiggly here whenever you're doing like a simulated slalom kind of thing. Here's a nice tight corner coming up on. It's kind of like a decreasing radius thing here. And so body control is really nice, so there isn't really much lean, and it feels pretty good, honestly, though. It still is definitely one of the top handlers in this segment. You got to remember that the subcompact thing here, there really isn't that much that's really sporty aside from, the CX-30 Turbo and like the Hyundai Kona N, which is front-wheel drive only. So, I mean, it certainly, immediately puts it right towards the top of the pack, just the fact that they even cared about the sporty thing when most of the others that this kind of competes with don't even really care about performance. And Dodge is also proud to say that they have the best-in-class stiffness as well. So really a nice, solid platform. That's what I'm really feeling, is it really does feel very solid with the way that it does handle. And also their weight distribution is really good as well. So it's 52 front, 48 rear. And that's also something that's pretty uncommon in this segment to even consider weight distribution, honestly. So the fact that, it's very evenly distributed here, especially in the GT, is really great. And so, I mean, you can feel all those performance benefits here, on these corners. I love that, they gave it the good grip. You have the all-wheel drive, which is typically a 50-50 50-50 split. It doesn't get any rear bias settings or anything like that, unfortunately, but it is a torque vectoring all-wheel drive system as well. Now, it's a brake-based torque vectoring, but it does do the torque vectoring thing as well. And so, you know, it all just works together to give this vehicle, you know, a very planted feel. All right, so now we've got some nice tight corners here. We can try out how this thing handles whenever you're pushing it a little bit more on some tighter circumstances here. Nice little back and forth here, nice tight switchback. All right, yeah, it's feeling pretty good. This 9-speed though, I do wish I, was able to control it a little bit easier, because even in sport mode here, transmission keeps wanting to upshift and like save fuel economy. It's like, no, I want you to stay in those higher gears. So we'll try manual mode here so it sticks to a good gear. See how that does. It handles very well. It's very, very impressive with the handling for sure. One other thing though I will say about this engine is it redlines, it looks like it's about 5,500 RPM, so not a huge power band. Honestly, a very low power band compared to a lot of the other competitors. I mean, most stuff these days will, rev out to 6,500. This does not, but it's certainly punchy. You have that great torque, a ton of torque, and so I mean, it still powers you out of corners really well. And yeah, it's doing a good job here for sure. And now we have some more tight corners here, and we're going downhill more so now. So the transmission isn't really getting in the way as much as it was when we were going uphill. And it feels really great going around these corners. And so I don't want to discount the handling. It certainly handles very, very well. And I just wish that the transmission tuning was a little bit better and that the steering was a little bit sharper. If those two things were a little bit better, I think this would really be top notch. As it is, it's good, but not great in my opinion as far as the handling. But again, for a subcompact crossover, having one with any kind of performance lean at all is a gift, so I'm not complaining. But it just was expecting a little bit more out of the Hornet. But this road's got some off-camber parts and some little undulations and bumps, and it's all very composed and does a really good job of soaking all that stuff up and just feeling so confident and capable whenever you're pushing it around these corners. And now I'm out on the highway here in the Hornet, and I have the adaptive cruise control on with the lane centering function turned on, so that will do some steering assist for you. You still have to have your hands on the wheel, but it does do the steering, and I'm just kind of letting my hands kind of rest on the wheel gently and letting it do the steering here, and it's really impressive. So the adaptive cruise and this lane centering are not standard. You do get lane keep assist is standard, and regular cruise control, but the adaptive stuff here is only in this extra package. But it's doing a really good job here. Other safety tech though that is standard is automatic emergency braking, blind spot monitoring, and a lane keep assist system. So there is some lane keeping assist even in vehicles that don't have this extra tech package on it, but it's really doing a good job here so far. Just my limited experience, we have some gentle corners and stuff, and it's been doing that pretty well. I will say the lane centering isn't perfect, but it's actually favoring the shoulder side of the highway, which I actually prefer, so you're not too close to other vehicles, but it's doing a really good job. It's doing confident steering here. And overall, I'm pretty impressed with this, system so far. Obviously, I'll have to do some more extensive testing whenever I have one of these for a week. But first impressions here is that it's a really nice adaptive cruise control system and does really do some solid, helpful steering assist as well. All right, so now I'm trying out the RT plug-in hybrid version here. And so it has over 30 miles of electric range, they're saying, thanks to a 15.5 kilowatt hour battery. And so as far as the driving experience here, well, I'm currently in the hybrid mode. There's a hybrid, an e-save, and an electric mode, as well as the sport mode. And the hybrid mode will prioritize depleting that battery and just going on electricity alone, unless you're going for a full throttle acceleration where it'll kick on the gas engine to help you out, or if you're just trying to go and you don't have enough battery charge, then it will of course kick on the gas engine. But in hybrid mode here, since I'm just driving with electricity alone, you have a good amount of punch from that rear motor, so that I'm able to accelerate, get up to speed, do, little around town passes, things like that without any kind of problem. And it seems to be a good amount of, punch here from the electric motors so far. And like now, just accelerating from a stoplight, no problems, keeping up with traffic, getting up to speed here in the electric mode here. So, a good amount of punch there so far. And other things here. So, you do have a little bit more weight here. So, the thing with the plug-in hybrids is they weigh 425 pounds heavier than the GT non-hybrid version. So, these end up being about 4,140 pounds. And thankfully, though, the weight is all the batteries that are in the floor there. So, nice and low with that center of gravity for that extra weight. And so, I'll have to go on some tighter, windier corners to figure out, how this handles compared to the GT version. By the way, this one does also still have the track package on it, and you still got these Alcantara seats and all that, but so this one should be pretty identically equipped to that GT that I was just in. And as we're slowing down to a stop here, thankfully the brake pedal is still really predictable. Sometimes in plug-in hybrids it can be a little weird with trying to do the regen braking and the standard braking. Thankfully in this, so far the brake pedal feels very normal and really good, and of course you have those Brembo brakes here as well on the RT to give you that stopping power, and since you have the extra power here of the RT version. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into sport mode here, and I'm going to do a Powershot launch. So you can hear the rumble from this engine. It definitely has more exhaust note than the regular Hornet GT. But anyway, so we pull both paddles back, and that primes this Powershot function, and then we just floor it, and then it gives you the extra power. So here we go. All right. Yeah, that is the extra punch I was looking for out of the Hornet. You can really tell in the mid-range, especially, where the gas engine is still pretty punchy on its own. I think it does almost 200 horsepower on its own, but then you have that electric motor that really gives you that extra mid-range there and kind of fills in some of the turbo lag you have a little bit of with this engine. But it feels punchy. This is definitely the one to get if you want the most exciting driving experience. I think it's definitely something you got to pay extra for. It doesn't come cheap, but if you want a subcompact crossover with the most power possible, this is the way to do it. It's the 1.3 liter turbo 4, and combined with the electric motor, it does a total of 288 horsepower and 383 pound-feet of torque. So only about 20 more horsepower, but you have almost 90 more pound-feet of torque, and then with the Powershot function, that gives you an extra 30 horsepower for those 15 seconds, and then it cools off, and then you can do that again after another 15 seconds. But you can do it also either when you're stopped or when you're rolling, so it's great for passing maneuvers and things like that. Now, it is only 30 more horsepower, so it's not mind-blowing with how much quicker it'll be, but they do say that with Powershot mode, it will speed up the 0 to 60 supposedly by 1.5 seconds, and so it drops it down to a 5.6 second 0 to 60 here for this. And so yeah, it definitely feels punchy for sure. And yeah, I also gotta say that I think, so in sport mode, steering gets a little tighter in both of these, but I feel like the steering is a little sharper and more direct here in this. Interestingly though, this has a slower steering ratio. It's, I think, 14.6 to 1 versus like the 13.6 to 1 you have in the GT, but it just, I don't know, it feels really good. I'm definitely digging the RT a little bit more than the GT. The GT is still great, and it's definitely the value winner for sure, but if you have a little bit more money to spend here, I gotta say the RT, yeah, that electric punch in the mid-range is what really makes this exciting to accelerate in. And then the extra perk is you get, the 30 miles or over 30 miles of electric range they're claiming out of this 15.5 kilowatt hour battery as well. And so overall, it seems to be a pretty compelling combo here. And I also love that you have these giant paddle shifters. It's one of the great carryovers from the Alfa Romeo Tonale and Alfa Romeos in general, where you have these column-mounted paddle shifters. And that is one of the difference here is you have a 6-speed Eisen automatic versus the 9-speed automatic in the GT. And right now in automatic mode, we're still in sport mode, but it's kind of confused. It really is eager to do the downshifts, which is good. It's more eager than the 9-speed was in the GT, but it's really hopping around with the shifting a good bit here. So we're going to try out some manual shifts here and see how that does. Okay, pretty quick for the downshift. We'll do an upshift here. All right, so not quite as snappy as the ZF8 speed. If you're used to other Dodges or other Alfa Romeos even, they all use ZF8 speeds. This is not going to be as quick as that. Downshifts are close, but it's the upshifts where, even at full throttle there, it wasn't upshifting as fast as the ZF8 speed. So not as enjoyable to use these paddles as it is in an Alfa Romeo Stelvio, like the one I just reviewed recently, but still nice and still feels pretty good. And so yeah, I'm gonna have to spend more time in an RT. I just have a quick little loop here in this to get a sense of it, but I'm hoping to spend an entire week with both the GT and the RT at some point to really dive into the different personalities of these two models. But one other thing too is that in addition to having more of that weight lower with the center of gravity with the batteries, you also do have a ride height that's over an inch lower here on the RT compared to the GT. So that's also a nice little perk here. So I think that's part of also why why this feels a little bit better in the handling department. And so I'm just really impressed with the RT here so far. And you know, it's just great. You also have the great fuel efficiency of the hybrid component and the electric thing, so you have really the best of all the worlds. You have the best performance, you have the best efficiency. We haven't gotten any kind of fuel economy ratings for the RT version yet, so I can't say definitively, but I would hope that this is going to get better fuel economy than the regular GT version without the hybrid stuff. So you get, you know, great efficiency, the best power, and still really great handling and all that as well. So I'm glad that, you know, those extra 425 pounds, you know, don't really saddle this vehicle much more than the regular GT. I think it feels, you know, just as good, honestly, with the handling. And it's also great. You still have these Michelin Pilot Sport 4 all-season tires. You have the Koni adjustable dampers, all the other great stuff from the GT as well. So yeah, it really feels good. This is a solid little combo for sure, and I'm glad to see that they went for the performance angle for the plug-in hybrid here in this instead of just making it super efficient. I like you got so much power and so much extra fun here with the RT. And I now popped it over into the electric mode, and we're kind of rolling at about 30 miles per hour. I'm just going to put my foot to the floor and just see how punchy this electric motor is on its own. Here we go. All right, so it kicks on the gas engine and overrides your selection of the electric thing if you do request maximum power. So we'll go back into electric. I'll try and go right above full throttle and try this again. Here we go. All right, so it's a good amount of punch. I have to say it's you know, pretty good. One of the best as far as plug-in hybrids that I've experienced as far as how much punch you have. Now, I don't think it's quite as good as like a RAV4 Prime, for example. I think that still feels a little punchier in electric mode than this does, but it's not far off. This is still very good, and I think, you know, for some milder highway merging and, you know, milder passes and things like that, you could totally do it all in electric mode here. It really is a solid electric motor, and it's not like some of these others where you have, you know, 20 horsepower in the back, you know, giving you some rolling, you know, stop and go capability or something. Like, this is a nice punchy electric thing, so you can truly do, I'd say, most of that 30 miles of electric range, you know, fully in electric mode before you have to even use this gas engine, unless you need to go full throttle. So yeah, I'm pretty impressed with the whole combo altogether. Alright, so I've been driving the GT for a little while longer here now, and over the past few hours it has certainly grown on me a little more. Whenever it does detect some harder braking, then it will do some downshifts, and it seems to get the message a little bit better that I'm looking for some, you know, sportier action out of the transmission. So it certainly is getting better, and I think, you know, if it had just slightly sharper steering, hands down, I would say this is better handling as far as the suspension setup compared to the CX-30 Turbo. And honestly, it's even tighter than the Kona N, I think, at least if it's in its softer setting that has a variable adaptive suspension, and it really is a lot of fun for what it is. I'm really impressed. The only other little critique I will say is that I wish that these dual mode dampers had greater variation between the two modes, because in sport mode here it's a little firmer, but it's really tough to even tell. I mean, you can certainly feel a little more of the vibrations through the road and stuff whenever you are in the you know, sport mode, but I wish there was a greater change. I wish it was buttery soft in the non-sport mode and nice and stiff in the sport mode. There isn't as much of that differentiation as I would like to see, but otherwise, you know, it still is such a fun thing. And just the fact that, you know, you get this for $30,000 starting, it's impressive. And so really the last two things here to mention are the fuel economy and the pricing here of the Hornet GT. So first off, fuel economy. These are rated at 21 mpg in the city, 29 on the highway, and 24 combined. Over my driving here, I've been doing about between 25 to 26.5 mpg is what I've been seeing on, you know, the spirited back roads, a little bit of highway. Your mileage will vary, and I'll have to wait till I have one of these for a whole week to really see, you know, what daily driving, you know, fuel economy is like. But, you know, as far as the EPA stuff goes, it's honestly, you know, it's not the best, but considering how much power it's putting out, I would say that it's really not much of a fuel economy penalty over, you know, some of the much slower competitors, which don't do much better on fuel economy, honestly. If you do want the best fuel economy possible, that RT version, if you're willing to go up to that, gives you, you know, better fuel economy with that smaller engine and the hybrid capability that that has. So great that you do offer that for those who are interested in that, but I think, you know, this is still going to be really great, especially at the price point. And that brings me to the last thing here, the pricing of the Hornet. So before destination, they start at like just under $30,000. With destination, it's basically $31,500. And even at that price point, though, it's still pretty impressive, you know, with all the standard tech that you get, all the nice features, and again, that standard power for that money is really impressive. And you know, you can pay that amount of money for a vehicle that has basically half as much power as this does, and actually has worse tech than this does as well. So it really is impressive if you are careful with the options. This one, as tested with the track pack, which is $3,000, with the tech package, which is another like $2,250, and the blacktop package, which is another $2,000, plus the $5,000 extra for the plus version here, which, you know, gives you the nicer features and all that. There are a few discounts there, so the packages sometimes cancel each other out a little bit with some of the features. But anyway, the grand total for this one is $42,805. And at that price point, you know, that's where it gets tough, because, you know, obviously these are great packages, and there are some packages and equipment you don't get offered in like a CX-30 Turbo. And with the Kona N, you know, it's a little bit hard to compare that directly, considering that's only front-wheel drive. So, you know, that's going to be a little bit cheaper as far as its basis because of that. But the Kona N, you know, still for mid-30s, there's an adjustable exhaust on that sounds way sweeter with its crackles and pops. There's more adjustability with the adaptive dampers. There's some nice improvements there for the Kona N. As far as the CX-30 Turbo, you know, that goes for more of the premium thing and less of the sporty thing, but you know, it does give you more torque, and you can load up a CX-30 Turbo now. You can't get cooled seats in those, but it has everything else basically that this offers, and you can get a fully loaded one of those for like 37 or 38. And you know, again, I would say this handles better, aside from I like the Mazda steering better, but I think this has a better suspension setup. But if you're okay giving up a little bit of grip, you know, those don't have performance tires or any kind of sportier dampers or anything, but if you're okay giving up a little bit of handling, I think that's still going to be the better value, unless again you are okay with, you know, pretty, you know, bare bones Hornet. You don't need the black appearance stuff, you don't need the track package stuff, because you do still get Kona dampers even on the non-track pack version. It's just that you get the 2-mode thing. But since the 2 modes aren't a huge change, and the Brembo brakes you get, you know, are a nice touch as well. But I personally think that, you know, you could probably do without the track pack. Skipping out on that, you save $3,000. Blacktop thing, you know, skipping out on that, you save $2,000. That knocks $5,000 off of it already. You know, one of these in the mid to high 30s makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And then with that RT version, they start at $40,000 plus destination. So you basically $41,500 for one of those to start. And then you also have the same kind of packages available on that you can add on. You can load one of those up over $52,000. And so, you know, that one, it's a little bit of a tougher sell for sure, because with that, it's only $3,000 cheaper than the Alfa Romeo Tonale, which is the more luxurious version of this same vehicle. And you know, that doesn't do, you know, the same kind of features. It doesn't have the Powershot feature like you have in the RT Hornet, and you know, a few other things. But you know, you have the more luxurious interior with the Alfa a little bit. You know, it's not a huge difference, but you know, it doesn't really undercut the Tonale as much as, you know, I think it should. And that also is just pretty expensive, because once you are shopping stuff in the, you know, 40s and low 50s, I mean, there's some impressive, you know, performance crossovers you can get in that segment as well. So overall, I think, you know, it's a really cool combo. I think the GT makes the most sense currently, but overall, it's a ton of fun, you know, and I think it's great to have finally another competitor to the Kona N, which might not live much longer here, and, you know, just have something to compete with the CX-30 Turbo that's actually performance-oriented instead of that, you know, having more of that luxury competitor focus. I'm glad that, you know, Dodge is going for the aggressive thing here, the sporty thing, like Dodge often does. You know, they're the ones that are bringing the performance and, you know, kind of busting the segment in a way, and giving something truly exciting whenever everyone else in the segment, for the most part, is content with half as much horsepower and, you know, a much more bland driving experience than what you have here with the Hornet. And I'm so glad they're offering this, and it's just a really great new option in the subcompact segment. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the Hornet in the comments below. Also, please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming. And huge thanks to Dodge for providing me here with this opportunity as well. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.